Work works. It seems obvious, but if you're looking for success, you've got to get to work and work through the changes. Real estate expert Rich Ganim talks about working through changes in the real estate market with me next on the Compounding Change podcast.
This is the Compounding Change podcast, sharing stories of small but meaningful changes that compound into amazing impact. Brought to you by Shannon Davis and DavisCompoundingChange.com. Change happens fast. Take advantage. Discussions on this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to DavisCompoundingChange.com or this podcast. Now, here's your host, Shannon Davis.
Welcome to Compounding Change, the podcast where small actions lead to big results. I'm Shannon Davis, a financial advisor and your host of the show. I have the privilege of working with firefighters, police officers, and others on a daily basis to help plan retirements and secure financial futures. But this show's not just about finances. It's about the impact of small changes. Twice a month, I get the opportunity to sit down with people to talk about those changes that they're making in their lives to make impactful differences. So, have you ever wondered about what it takes to be a successful realtor? Maybe you've also wondered about the impact of buying or selling a house. Today, we're talking with Rich Ganim with the Ganim Group, who has been a realtor for over 12 years and works and serves clients in both Ohio and Florida. That's very nice to work in Florida too. Well, welcome, Rich. I'm glad you took the opportunity to talk to me today. I appreciate the time. So, of course, we were talking before the show started, so we've pretty much covered all bases, right? We got nothing to say.
We've talked our way through it, right?
Right. Exactly. If only we'd had that recorded. You know, in our conversation and in talking to you over this last couple years and then looking at your website, it just made me think of all the questions that I get on a regular basis about whether it's entrepreneurial success or whether it's about being a client of a realtor. I thought maybe we could start with you just sharing some of the changes over time. I think you even reference on your website how what we did years ago in real estate is not what's necessarily working today. And I sure as heck know that interest rates have changed and that our young children are not in the same position to buy a home as we were years ago. So let's start with your success as a realtor.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's a real honor, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today. I mean, I kind of fell into being in real estate, if I'm completely honest with you, right? In a prior life, I sold advertising at a NBC and an ABC affiliate here in Cleveland, Ohio. And as the Great Recession, everybody's well aware of that from 2008, 2009, when they restructured the sales department, I was the last one in. So as they restructured, because I was the last one in, I was also the first one out. And what I thought was a terrible time in my very young career, I was probably 23, living the dream, right? I'm working in television. All my friends are, they're doing whatever they're doing, and I'm working at a TV station.
It sounds sexy, right?
It was, and honestly, it was the best thing I ever did. But what I thought was a terrible opportunity turned into actually being a blessing of my life. I found myself sitting at a Panera with my dad, and he said, why don't you get into real estate? I'm like, for what? And he's like, well, you're a natural sales. Like, sales is just part of who you are. I think you'd be really good at it. I said, okay. So we left that meeting at Panera. I signed up for classes. 4.5 weeks later, I'm licensed. It's now May or June of 2010, and I haven't looked back. So now, as we get into 2025 here, we're entering 15 years in the industry and more than probably at this point, more than 1,000 homes sold. And and licensed in 2 states, and I get to do it every day, and it's been a blessing.
Well, and so how did you end up with, I think that there's a lot of Ohioans that go to Florida. So it seems like a natural transition or a natural joint effort, but how did that happen?
I woke up one day and said, if I'm going to sell, no, again, this is 2012 at this time, this conversation's happening. So the market's very different today than it was then. But I said, if I'm going to sell $100,000 houses, I am not doing it in Cleveland. I'm moving to Florida. And I had always wanted to live in Florida. My Siesta Key has always been has a special place in my heart. It's my place. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided, you know what, I'm doing it. And I just packed up my stuff one day and decided in January of 2013 that I was moving to Florida, and I did for 4 years.
Nice.
And that's probably like the evolution of my career. Like things were probably pretty decent in 10, 11, and 12, but my career took off in 13 when I moved. It's quite remarkable when I look back and see like all of the little things that took place in order for the big things to happen.
Right.
That move to Florida was the catalyst.
So jumping forward, you started the Ganim Group. You were saying you said, I'm sorry, 2017, 2018.
Unofficially, yeah, 2017,
Okay.
2018. It probably wasn't until 2021 that I
Okay.
actually took the legal process, in incorporating, and then the DBAs and all of those things. But for the longest time, I was just a singlepreneur, sole
Mm-hmm.
practitioner, selling real estate, and it wasn't until getting some proper guidance financially and for some tax benefits of, hey, you might want to incorporate yourself, to, hey, you might want to be an S corp now, to,
Mm-hmm.
hey, how much are so it's all been a progression.
So like anything, I mean, part of your success or some of your success is just is reaching out to other professionals to step by step making yourself more of a professional.
Well, listen, nobody succeeds alone, right? So,
Yep.
I got myself so far, and then I was
Right.
like, okay, if I'm going to go from here to here, who do I need to have in my world?
Yep.
And that's where, tax advice, legal advice, financial advice, like I've just started to build, I almost say I almost build my boardroom, even
Mm-hmm.
though like I'm an individual business owner, but I've kind of built my boardroom of people that I can turn to
Mm-hmm.
for guidance in one aspect of life or business or another, that I've kind of leaned on over the years to help me get to, that next level.
Well, and you even, I don't want to say you brought your wife into it, but I know that she works with you as well as you have a team of people. I'm looking at your website is what I keep looking over to my other screen for, but I see your beautiful wife, Tria, working with you. But you said, which I didn't realize because on your website, she's director of operations, but she also is working in mortgages now too. So that's all
Yeah.
part of
So
your team. You're just continuing to build.
I have this mindset that if I'm not building, I'm not growing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Tria is like the director of operations. She helps obviously helps run the house,
Mm-hmm.
but she also helps operate me as an individual, right? Because anybody that knows me, I'm running 100 miles an hour in 100 different directions. So yeah, so she helps run the operations, and then she also works as a processor for Mutual of Omaha Mortgage, and
Nice.
she helps run that operation there as well.
Well, we'll have to get her on to talk about the intricacies of mortgage and qualifying for a mortgage. So just to touch on, as far as an entrepreneur goes, do you feel like you just fell into it, or would you say it's been a lot of hard work?
It's all hard work.
Okay.
Uh,
It's like I said, the power of compounding, right? So it's not just financial, it's also fitness and fundraising and everything that comes in to our lives. And I think sometimes we look at whether it be an actor or actress or a singer. I mean, look at some of the shows on TV. It kind of portrays that people just are successful. And I think especially this generation looks at it, well, the other generation, not my generation, but our younger kids look at it and think, oh, I want that. They want to be an influencer, right? And think that there's overnight success. And even though there might be that occasional person who wins the lottery, whether it be with a career or literally winning the lottery, it's just step by step. And so do you feel like you're now experiencing the growth of it, or do you still feel like you're busting your butt and
Well,
hard work?
I think it depends on the aspect of the business, right? Because to your point, right, everything happens gradually and then suddenly, right? So like that overnight success that we see online, that because that's where we exploit all of our successes is online.
Is 10 or 20 years in the making.
Right. Like we don't see all of the late nights and the early mornings and the failures that led up to that instant success.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing is everything happens gradually and suddenly, right? Nobody gets rich suddenly. We've saved our way through all of these different obstacles and with these different levers, and we're pulling the real estate investment lever, we're pulling the 401k lever, the IRA, we're pulling all of the different levers, right? Mutual funds, all the things, and then we get to the point of retirement, and now we have this nest egg that we've accumulated over 30 years,
right?
It just didn't happen, right? My business, it's the same way. Like once we feel like we've maxed out one piece, we're moving over to another piece that didn't get maxed out, so that we can now focus on that. And then we have to come back because we took our attention off of this. We have to refill this cup now, right? So it's constantly we're constantly in this ebb and flow of never truly being in balance.
Yeah.
That we're counterbalancing everything with the goal of one day getting to the point where, okay, we've made it.
Right. Well, and I think if you think you made it, then you've leveled out, and it might be time for retirement then, because we always have to have the carrot in front of us and that next goal, which is all about whether it's saving money or building a business ultimately.
One thing that John Maxwell, he always says is that people have uphill dreams and downhill habits, right? And it for me, like that really stood out when I heard him say that. He's standing on stage and he goes, uphill dreams and then downhill habits. And for me, what was so important to hear that was there is no overnight success, right? Everybody has an uphill dream that unless we're willing to work on the uphill habit to get there, in business, in life, whether, personal life, professional life, fitness life, it doesn't matter what element it is. We all aspire to have a certain level of something.
Right.
But do our habits, are they in the same trajectory of our goals?
Right. Working to be 1% greater today than we were yesterday. Exactly.
Yeah, in all aspects, right?
Yeah. So you were just at a convention in I think you said Arizona, right? What were you
Phoenix.
speaking about? What was your presentation on?
Yeah, so I was asked to attend a real estate conference for a coaching company that I subscribe to, and they were featuring me on stage to share with the audience of how we built our business, and in a down real estate market, which is I guess we've been in a down real estate market in 2024. I think there were 4 million sides nationwide. We were up 30% year over year.
Nice.
And they had asked us to share some of the things that we've done in 2024 to get to that, to outpace the market by 30%.
Do you have a few keys with that? Do you have a few keys that you can share with us of what you feel that you've done, and maybe they can apply to other businesses or to life?
Yeah, I think the biggest key that I shared, and it wasn't really that big of a takeaway when I thought about it, but the audience, everybody, and I simply said work works,
Right.
right? Everybody wants to know, like, Rich, what's working right now? Like, what are you doing to outpace the market? I'm like, well, we're working. And
Seems like common sense, right?
and yet how many times do we get busy doing all of the things,
Mm-hmm.
right? As business owners, we have all of the things that we have to do, and if we don't have a full admin team and a CFO and a marketing person and a bookkeeper, and like that falls on us as
Right.
the single entrepreneur, right? So we can get busy doing all of the things,
Right.
and yet if we're not focusing on the 20% of the activities that are going to yield us that 80% of the result, or the highest dollar producing activity, it's really easy to get busy doing non-dollar producing activities. And one of the things that I try to instill with the folks that choose to partner with us is all of the other stuff, it's just stuff
Mm-hmm.
until we have a client that's ready to put pen to paper to buy a house, or we have a client ready to put pen to paper to sell a house. Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter what your social looks like. It doesn't matter what your business card looks like or your website. None of it matters unless we have clients that are ready, able, and willing to do
Mm-hmm.
something. And we spend a lot of time talking about the client experience, and part of that client experience is in getting them to yes. How do we help our clients get to yes? That's when we've earned our money.
Yep. Yep. Well, getting them to yes. So on both sides of the coin, which give us some advice or tell me what those young kids or young adults can do to prep themselves for home ownership. I mean, as a financial advisor and as a mother with those 20 somethings, I know everybody says just put it into a house, just put it into a house. Why waste money on rent? There's a lot of things, a lot of financials that go into a house that people aren't always prepared for. But how can they prepare to be a homeowner?
I think the first thing is just understanding that, to your point, right? If you're not paying a mortgage, you're paying rent. If unless you're living at home with mom and dad. And yet, if you're paying rent to somebody, you're paying somebody's mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think understanding
Right.
that the the equity that you're earning paying rent is 0%.
Mm-hmm.
The equity that you're earning paying your mortgage is going to increase month over month. I think there's a disconnect in the education system around home ownership versus renting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of that is simply just a lack of education. Um, there are programs for people to buy a home with 0% down. And not everybody has to purchase with 20% down payment. There's programs out there that for veterans, for low income earners, for folks that live in rural areas. There's 0% financing options.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think the biggest thing that our generation needs to know, that younger generation that's looking to buy, what I think they need to know is when they're entering the market, the way home buying is today is not like it was in the early 2000s, and it's not like it was in the 80s or when their parents were buying their first house.
Yes.
Let me explain what I mean by that. Here in Cleveland, there are, and I'm sure it's like this throughout the country as well. I know it's like this in Florida for us too. There's an entry level market where somebody's going to come in and they're going to buy their first home. And then traditionally, right, like our parents, traditionally, they would buy that entry level home, that beginning home, and then in 3 to 5 years, they'd trade out of that home into the next home.
Right.
And by that point, they would have made some equity that they would have then rolled over into the next home. They'd stay there for 3 to 5 years, and then they'd trade again, and they'd trade back up into the next home. So they'd go from like that $150,000 to $200,000 home into that 300 to 350 into that $500,000 home. We were gradually moving up into the house. Because of what happened in 2008 and 2009, that entire entry level market is slowly starting to disappear. Mm-hmm. And there's an entire generation of first time home buyer today that's probably, I think the average homeowner, first time home buyer today is now 27, mm-hmm. where historically it was you were in your younger 20s buying your first home. So if the average is 27, your median is probably closer to 30, I would think. What they're doing, they're either still staying with mom and dad or they're in a low rent situation. Right. But they're buying that second or third tier home. Mm-hmm. So that entire entry level home, that buyer's not there. Yeah. Which is causing what you're causing is where that move up buyer is going to go from that 150 to 300. They're now competing with first time home buyers. Mm. And then you have your $500,000 homeowner who wants to trade down because the kids have left the nest. They're not trading down to that first time home buyer price point of that, that under 200. They're going to trade down into that $300,000 price point, right? So now you have people that are trading down and people that are jumping right in to what today is your first time home buyer market. Mm. Yeah. Which is what's causing, especially in Northeast Ohio, which is what's causing a lot of the market tightness that we're starting to see. Mm-hmm. So home buying today is not at all what it was 15 years ago, let alone 20 or 30 years ago when mom and dad first bought their house. Right. So there's a lot of education that needs to take place in, one, how are people buying homes today? And two, what are the financing arms that are available to us? Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, what we're seeing a lot of people in positions where mom, dad, and grandma and grandpa are assisting in the purchase because there's an inheritance tax that can be avoided if we're gifting equity of sorts through what we would have left you. Right. But we're going to give it to you now so you can go ahead and buy that $300,000 to $500,000 house that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford. Yeah. So there's a lot of pieces in play that traditionally weren't available prior to 2009. Right. I still think, and I 100% agree with you as far as paying somebody else's mortgage if you're renting, but I still think that sometimes there's the pressure to buy a home when maybe right now, maybe you're not living with mom and dad, until you're 28. And maybe the best thing is to not live high on the hog with renting the biggest and the best, but maybe there's a benefit to renting so that you can save and actually properly prepare for the purchase because you've got landscaping, you've got maintenance, and you do see a lot. And I mean, it depends on where you go in the Cleveland area, but you see the rundown houses, or if you ever drive down the rural streets and you think, how did that just someday become abandoned? I mean, what happened that house is just completely abandoned? So I think that there's prepping on a financial aspect too, that definitely prepping. You need to have a slush fund in order to absolutely prepare for a house too. I mean, listen, you ask anybody that owns a house, a cheap repair is $500. Right. Yeah. Right. And when you're renting, if something breaks, you just call your landlord. Right. So there are a lot of things that can sneak up on you in that respect. And renting makes sense for a lot of people. So don't hear me say that renting is bad. Right. It makes sense for a lot of people. Right. If you're only going to be here for a couple years or you're going to relocate, renting makes a lot of sense, especially as you're trying to build that nest egg. To be able to then go and purchase. But then buying a home is not for everybody. Right. And to your point though, I think that goes back to there's a lot of people I'm sure you are aware who think that selling real estate is just easy. I'm just going to go get my license and I'm going to sell a home and I'm going to make X amount of percent, which they don't realize where all that percentage goes. It's not all in your pocket. But with that said, the same thing goes with being a landlord,
right? So people have this big idea that they want to have multiple houses and create an income stream from that, which is an awesome prospect. At the same time, like you just said, who gets called? Who has to do those repairs, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's just always that we need to be financially prepared for it. Not to preach. It's not about me. We're talking about you, but
Well,
just, I
no,
mean, they all
I think you're
interchange.
right. Right.
Yeah.
So like we tell our first time investors, like, listen, like if you're going to buy an investment property, you need to have at least 90 days worth of reserves at
Mm-hmm.
all times for my tenant stopped paying to, I can't, now they've moved out and now we're vacant.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have that nest egg.
Right.
And and investing in real estate's not for everybody either, right? Like what's your risk tolerance?
Right.
We have investor clients that they will only buy government subsidized properties. They don't care what city it's located in. Some of the best returns they have are in suburbs for
Mm-hmm.
government subsidy housing. But we also have investors that they want to buy a 4 unit in a not so great section of town, and they just want that guaranteed money.
Right.
To me, that's scary. That like my risk tolerance way too high for that. But for some, it makes sense, and like
Right.
that's where as the financial planner and the real estate agent, right, coupled with the tax preparer and the
Right.
attorney, like that's where that boardroom needs to come together and really say, okay, what's your level of risk? How are you going to now invest that return so that you have your nest egg, but you're also then using it as a wealth driver for the other pieces of your life that you're funding,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, then, so jumping over to those selling their home, I think that there's more detail to that too that you could that you personally, Rich, could benefit us from and give a few tips with preparing to sell a home, considering the market. Of course, you have different levels, that 100,000 to 300,000 to $500 million, right? So it might be different from all aspects, but I see some pretty sketchy pictures out there so how do you prepare your clients? It's amazing what you see.
It truly is amazing what we see. So regardless of price point,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of this is an investment property to this is the custom built home of my dreams that we're selling, we give the same advice, and it starts with walking through the property, going, this is how model homes show,
Right.
right? So we always encourage our clients to first and foremost take us up on a free staging consultation,
Mm-hmm.
where we sit down, we bring in our stager for free for a consultation with you, the homeowner. And what that stager is going to do is they're going to walk through with an unbiased opinion, right? Because they're getting paid whether you take their advice or not.
Right.
But to walk through and go, if we don't need this, let's remove it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we take down that black wall. Maybe we
Mm-hmm.
paint that black wall white, right?
Right.
Because in the eyes of a buyer, a can of paint is $5,000.
Right.
When in reality, you can go to Home Depot and buy a gallon of paint for $50.
Right. Yeah.
So what we're doing with bringing in our stager is we're trying to eliminate any possible objection to tonality of
Mm-hmm.
paint colors, to the way that we live in our home is different than the way we sell our home. So maybe it's depersonalizing some of the family pictures, to maybe we need to rearrange our furniture to make sure that we really showcase the fireplace. Even though you don't use it,
Right.
we want to showcase it in our marketing.
Make it look warm. It's kind of like
Well,
social media, don't believe everything you see on Facebook, right? But that's pretty much how we should be presenting our houses.
absolutely. Because the way that we sell a home is different than the way we live in a home.
Right.
Something as simple as changing out light bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
No, hear me out on this. Something as simple as changing out light bulbs. Like there was a craze back maybe 5 years ago with those Edison lights,
Mm-hmm.
where they gave off that orange hue.
Yep.
That in pictures they looked terrible,
Yep.
but in person it looked super cool. But when we change out light bulbs from soft white to daylight, it does wonders for the way the home looks online. Because that's the first place that we're going to sell a buyer.
Right.
Right? We have to first sell them online that they want to come into your house. The second place we have to sell the buyer is when they drive by your house on Friday night, getting ready to see if they actually want to go to the open house on Saturday. Right?
Yep.
So is the grass cut? Is there fresh landscaping? Are the weeds pulled? Have the windows been washed?
Yeah.
Right? All of those little things that you might think, that's not important. That's the second time we have to sell a buyer.
Yeah.
You'll often see us, we'll bring out our own landscaping crew to cut the grass before pictures because we want to make sure the lines look perfect for our pictures. And again, it's all about perception to the buyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So the third time we have to then sell the house is when they walk inside. So now have the carpets been cleaned? Have the windows again been washed? Have the fan blades been cleaned, or do we see the dust? It's little things that to you, because you live in the house, you don't notice. But as a professional marketer, what we have to look at to ensure is this done to the highest level.
Yeah.
Because if you want to sell your home for the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of headaches, we need to take the time up front to make sure we do all of the little tiny things, all of the compounding things that lead to you getting the most amount of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it might be a pain in the butt, but that's where the staging consultation comes in. That's where our professional marketing team comes in to make sure that the towels are folded properly, that the toilet seats are down, that the rooms are big, bright, and open, right? It's all of the little things that we have to do before we put the property on the market that allows you to stand out when it comes time to go on the market.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Fortunately, unfortunately, my husband's very particular. And when we sold our house in Colorado, that was one of the things that the buyers said. They opened up the fridge and all the cans were lined up perfectly in the fridge. All the condiments were lined up, and in the pantry, same thing, so you might not be buying the food or buying the beer that's in the fridge, but if it shows neat, then that, again, to your point, perception.
You're buying the lifestyle that home provides.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a paradigm shift that we have to make with our clients a lot of the times is, sometimes they're buying, they might be trading their $300,000 house for a $500,000 house, or vice versa. They might be going from 5 to $1 million. But what they're selling is a lifestyle to somebody else,
right,
that they haven't yet had. Right. There's more than financial value to having that $500,000 house. Right. There's a lifestyle that we attach to that.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to sell. What is your life going to be when you get to live in this house?
Exactly.
Or you can go live in that one that's not nearly as nice for the same price.
Right.
But when you live here,
it's going to be
this
better.
is the lifestyle.
Now your life is better. Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, like a lot of what we sell, it's the lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, the whole come full circle that's exactly what you do as a realtor, because again, back to the pictures, pet peeve when I go through pictures and the toilet seats are up and, then there's something out, whether it's an animal or, whatever. I love my dogs as much as the next person, but they probably shouldn't be in the picture.
I have sent my photographer back 2 and 3 times because the pictures aren't perfect.
Yeah.
And if you're going to pay me my fee,
right,
which is not cheap,
right,
if you're going to pay me my fee to market your property and I'm putting my name on it, it's going to be a 10.
Yep. Yep.
Not only because I demand it, but they deserve it.
Right. Yeah. Well, that jumps over to I can never leave a show without talking about something fitness, right? Because I years ago originated my career in personal training and CrossFit, and of course, and I do have friends outside of CrossFit, but that is where I met you,
That
is
is where we met.
CrossFit.
That is where
Yes,
we met.
yes. So back to compounding change and the little things. I know that we talked and that you are working on getting back into, so it's about the full life and the full changes in your life. And I know you have young kids, but you are back in the gym and working on some changes there too, right?
Every day is a journey, right? It's one foot in
Yep.
front of the other. Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey, right? And having two small kids, or 4 and 3, I kind of took my eye off of my health for
Yeah.
for a while, because I running the business and then wanting to be home. Um, my
Only so
health was
many
just what I
hours.
put on the back burner.
Right.
There's only
Yep.
so many hours of the day, and I was not good at prioritizing my time for my health.
Yep.
Um, and over the last 15 or so months, I've really tried to make that a priority again. Lost
Nice.
some weight, getting back into the gym now, and really making it a priority, because we can we can make all this money, we can do all of these things, but if we don't have our health first
Right.
and foremost, none of it else matters.
Yep. Yep.
And it wasn't until a mentor of mine told me that really kind of clicked, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're working all of these hours, you're doing all of these things, and for what?
Yeah.
If you don't have your health, what's the point of any of it?
Exactly.
And that, when you had asked me to be a part of your show, I'm like, what a story that is,
Yep.
to share, because whether you're selling real estate, or you're a financial advisor like yourself, or a mechanic, or whatever, if we don't have our health, we don't have anything.
Right.
Everything else disappears.
Right. And what are you working for?
Correct.
But it is also that time with the family, and you do have and I am correct that your kids are literally to the day 1 year apart, right?
To the day.
Yeah.
November
So
18th, 2020, and November 18th, 2021.
yeah.
Couldn't have planned it if we tried.
No, I had one other friend who had their kids that close together, and that's a feat in itself. But if you're making time for yourself, then hopefully others can too, because that's quite a busy schedule you have between running a business, being realtor, and two young kids. And I know
Well,
Tria obviously is in there too. So
well, it's all about priorities, right? And
right.
it wasn't a, there usually takes a defining moment to have clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't find 1 hour out of 24
Mm-hmm.
for myself,
Right.
that's a problem,
Right. Yeah.
right? That's a problem.
Yeah.
And 1 hour ultimately turns into 90 minutes, because there's a 15-minute drive there and a 15-minute drive
Right.
home. Okay, fine,
Right.
90 minutes. If
And
I can't
Shannon
find
starts
90,
talking to you and
right? Well, okay, now it's
right.
three. Now it's 3 days later.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But in all seriousness, all right, we all have the same 24 hours
Right.
in a day.
Yeah.
If I can't find 90 minutes for
Yep.
me to be
Mm-hmm.
completely selfish with my time, to turn my phone off
Mm-hmm.
and focus on my health, my fitness,
Yep.
then I am more backwards and more twisted than I ever was before.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reality is, and here's what's the defining moment for me. In those 90 minutes, the fires that I walked into the gym with are still going to be there 90 minutes later.
Right.
And they're going to be there 90 minutes later from that point when I leave.
Yep.
But in that 90 minutes, when I take my phone and put it on Do Not Disturb, and I focus on me, it doesn't matter what other fires are burning, because if I can't take care of me, I can't take care of those fires.
Yep.
I can't take
Exactly.
care of my family. I can't take care of my business. If I'm not there personally, physically, mentally, I can't take care of anything else.
Right.
And that
Yep.
was the defining moment for me. That's what brought me back to the gym.
Well, glad you're there. Glad you're there. And it's a good example to the kids, because we want to continue that for generations and beyond. So whether it's work ethic, financial savings ethic, or working on your health, I mean, those are all great examples for your boys.
That's what we do it for, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So where can people find you, Rich? And I know that, like we said, you do serve clients in both Florida and Ohio, but you do have specific areas in both states. So first of all, where, and then second of all, where can they find you?
Yeah, so we serve Northeast Ohio. So really from Columbus up.
Okay.
We do have partners that service the entire state of Ohio, just as we have
Okay.
partners that service the entire state of Florida. But our niche, if you will, is going to be Northeast Ohio, and then I kind of go from an L, so from Northport, Florida to Tampa, Florida, across I-4 into Orlando. That's our
Nice.
bread and butter. But we also service Destin to Miami in
Okay.
Florida as well with our partners. You can obviously go online to richganim.com.
Okay.
You can connect with me there, or the easiest way to connect with me, because I am an older millennial, the easiest way to connect with me is going to be on social media. At Rich Ganim on Instagram or on Facebook. You can follow along on YouTube as well.
Great.
And any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM or find my phone number online. It's pretty easy to find.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, your website looks good, and smiling faces there to greet everyone. So I'm sure you'll get those phone calls and answer it and be on top of it like you have been. Always fun to see your name pop up when I'm driving down the street, and I'm like, I know that guy. So
Listen, I'm a household name. What can I say?
yeah, right. Exactly. Well, you've done a great job. I really appreciate your time, Rich, and talking, and always chit-chatting at the gym. And I'm glad you're back at the gym, and look forward to more workouts and a good 2025. I cannot believe I'm saying that, but
Well, thanks for having me.
yeah,
It's been a real treat. Real pleasure.
absolutely. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
So thank you for joining me on this episode of Compounding Change. Remember, big results come from small, consistent actions. So until next time, take care, keep moving forward, and let's keep building a life filled with better health, wealth, and purpose.
This has been the Compounding Change Podcast with Shannon Davis. If you are a firefighter or first responder, you know that change happens fast. Life changes, finance changes, compounding change. Shannon Davis is a certified retirement counselor who understands the needs of Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters members. Click on daviscompoundingchange.com to learn more. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to daviscompoundingchange.com or this podcast. Please note that investment involves risk, and no statements made in this recording are indicative of future performance. The Compounding Change Podcast is brought to you by Shannon Davis.